Thank you. Yes, good morning or afternoon, depending on your location. I'm going to give you our current status for Krabbe and X-ALD in Georgia. So if you could go to the next slide, please. For X-ALD, we started with a pilot study that was NIH funded, and we completed that in 2017. We screened approximately 50,000 babies. It allowed us to get our screening algorithm mostly developed and also our follow-up steps in place. That was then added to our state panel, and it became feasible for us to do in the state lab with the implementation of the NeoBase 2 screening kit because the LPCs are included. And then we were also able to collaborate with our CT team at the state lab to develop and validate the HPLC test as an LDT for second tier testing. So we've been screening for about 14 months now. And I pulled the data, well, just shy of 1 year. I'm not sure why I didn't wait a week, but that's okay. So we screened close to 140,000 babies in that year. We sent 1,419 to second tier testing, which is approximately 1%. 23 of those that went for second tier testing were screened positive, 10 females, 13 males, which is 0.02% of all screens and 1.62% of our second tier testing. So really the second tier testing is essential in this setting. Right now we have 7 confirmed positives. 2 of those are repeat screens from an infant with Zellweger. 5 are males with X-ALD. 7 are pending and 9 are false positives. We have not identified any confirmed female carriers just yet. It's kind of yet to be seen if that's just to shake out in a year's worth of data or if that'll change. And then we also have 9 false positives. So our positive predictive value is approximately 30%, counting both screens from the Zellweger baby. So those numbers could be adjusted depending on how you wanted to do that math. Next slide, please. Overall, though, we're really happy with how ALD screening is going in the state. So it's been one of our smoother rollouts ultimately. Krabbe disease screening in Georgia, we are not quite live yet, so I'll give you the timeline of leading up to where we are. Krabbe disease was nominated to the Georgia Newborn Screening Advisory Council in early 2020. The committee meets semi-annually, and at our first meeting that year, we reviewed the nomination, and our process is essentially that we send nominations that we think are complete to a working group to report the specifics of implementation and essentially the local implications. How would it look in Georgia? Where would these children go for follow-up? How would the lab screen? We like to have that information, and our commissioner likes to have that information when we're making a decision on yes or no for a committee, for a condition. This working group met over the summer of 2020 to review all the available evidence and then make a recommendation to the committee. So we planned on a whole bunch of in-person meetings to have some really good live spirited discussion. And like everything else in 2020, we went entirely to Zoom, but we still got a lot of work done. So over the summer, we did kind of come to a consensus that there was good evidence and a very solid screening strategy for early infantile Krabbe disease. But we did still have some questions about follow-up and management for later onset disease or disease of uncertain onset. And keep in mind, we were making these decisions late 2020. So there are some recent publications that address some of these gaps, but we didn't have access to those at the time. So our recommendation was a state-funded pilot of at least 3 years to see what it would look like in Georgia. This would allow us to identify the children with early onset Krabbe disease who would benefit from screening, while also allow us to allow some of the data to develop, the literature to develop about later onset protocols, and also to see how it works in our state. This recommendation was made in November of 2020, and it was approved in January of 2021. And there was a budget appropriation for fiscal year 2022, which just started at the beginning of July. Next slide, please. At the time, we have been validating the Neo-LSD kit for the previously approved editions of Pompe disease and MPS 1. So we just had to do some additional work to our LIMS to allow for the reporting of Krabbe disease results, plus second tier testing for Krabbe disease result. That LIMS work is still in progress. So that's kind of where we're at right now. The test is validated from an analytical perspective. but we still need to get our limbs and reporting structure entirely finalized, including HL7 file transfers and a few other finishing pieces. We can definitely see the finish line though. So our algorithm is the multiplex enzyme assay plus the single condition clear tool. Confirmatory repeat is essentially that same assay in duplicate with the dual scatter plot from the clear tool. And for Krabbe disease, this abnormal on the confirmatory repeat refers to cycosine, and cycosine will serve as the primary reporting trigger. So abnormal cycosine simultaneously essentially triggers abnormal newborn screening report that requires immediate follow-up plus molecular testing, but we're not going to hold any newborn screening results waiting for the molecular testing. Normal cycosine is a normal screen and no molecular testing. So that's our algorithm. Hoping to go live very shortly, but again, still waiting on a few LIMS processes and testing and getting some of the final pieces put into place, but everything is looking very promising. So hopefully next year we should have 9 or 10 months of data to report at this meeting. Next slide is just kind of a contact information if anybody has any further questions or has any comments. Happy to discuss anything.